All right, welcome back. This time, I want to talk about negligence with contributory negligence. So we have the same setup, motorist, pedestrian, same probability of accident, same accident cost, same accident avoidance cost, that is the cost of taking due care. Only now the rule is negligence with contributory negligence. So I pasted in the cell from a paper, but let's make sure we understand it. In this top left corner, where nobody exercises due care, then nobody incurs a cost of exercising due care if there will be an accident, and that accident cost falls on the pedestrian. It falls on the pedestrian because even though the motorist did not exercise due care and is therefore negligent, the pedestrian also did not exercise due care and is contributorily negligent, and so they can't push liability over. So, if the pedestrian does not exercise due care and the motorist does, then the motorist exercises due care. They get a $10 cost because of that. The pedestrian does not exercise due care. Will there be an accident? Yes, absolutely. Those costs fall on the pedestrian. They fall on the pedestrian because they immediately do. Also, because the motorist was not negligent. So even under negligence, they would not fall on the motorist. In this case, the pedestrian was contributorily negligent. But that's not really an issue because the motorist was not negligent in the first place. So minus 100, minus 10. Oops. Now, if the pedestrian exercises due care and the motorist does not, you end up in this bottom left cell. The pedestrian is out $10 for exercising due care. The motorist does not exercise due care and is therefore negligent. So there is an accident, but those $100 accident costs are shifted to the motorist. So the motorist is out 100. And let's get rid of this. Now, what if the motorist, we're in the bottom right, the motorist does exercise due care. The pedestrian also exercises due care. In this case, there is a $10 avoidance cost, right? The cost of exercising due care is $10 to each of them. There's still a 10% chance of an accident. That expected $10 accident cost falls on the pedestrian because under negligence, the motorist did exercise due care, and so he cannot be held liable for those damages to the pedestrian. So those are the numbers in our payoff cell. Let's think about the incentives. Let's see. First, we'll say, what if the pedestrian does not take care? What's better off for the motorist? The motorist could not take care and be out 0, or take care and be out 10. The motorist would prefer 0, right, over 10. If, on the other hand, the pedestrian does not exercise due care, and so we're in this bottom row, then if the motorist does not take care, they're out 100. If they exercise due care, they're out 10. So the motorist does not have a dominant strategy in this situation. What about the pedestrian? Let's change up the colors here. Orange. So the pedestrian's numbers are the first ones in the box in each cell. So if the motorist were to not take care, that puts us somewhere in this left column. If the pedestrian does take care, they're out 10. If they don't take care, they're out 100. So the pedestrian is better off taking due care in the situation where the motorist does not. Now, what if the motorist does take due care? That puts us in the right column. And the pedestrian is out 100. If they don't take care, they're out 20 if they do take care. So the pedestrian is better off taking due care no matter what the motorist does. So we could say the pedestrian has a dominant strategy to exercise due care. Given that the pedestrian is likely to exercise due care, the motorist, who does not have a dominant strategy, but in the case where the pedestrian takes due care and the motorist can predict the pedestrian is likely to take care, then the motorist should also exercise due care, and we would end up down here. The social costs are lower. This is the best outcome for society. So negligence with contributory negligence, if you look at the values in the cells, they're actually very, very similar to what we did up here. And in both cases, we end up and that the Nash equilibrium, the likely outcome is down here where both parties exercise care. So let's go to the other sort of extreme and talk about strict liability. This is a scenario where if the motorist, so no matter what, basically, the motorist is liable. So we said strict liability, that was from the case, the garage and the blasting case, Spano over Perini. It's used in excessively dangerous situations. What if we said driving was, extremely dangerous, and therefore all of the precautions should fall on the motorist, and therefore if any accident occurs, the motorist is liable. So let's think about what that would look like. So let me switch to, we leave it in blue. If neither party exercises due care, will there be an accident? Yes. Who will ultimately have to pay for it? Well, that's the motorist, right? Because under strict liability, if there's an accident, the motorist is always liable. So if nobody exercises care, there's an accident, the motorist is liable, but nobody incurs the $10 cost of using care. Now, what if the pedestrian does not take care, but the motorist does take care? Well, that puts us in this top right cell. Will there be an accident? Yes. Who will have to pay for that? The motorist, because it's strict liability. And on top of that, the motorist has taken due care, so the motorist is out 110. Now, what if the pedestrian does exercise due care, but the motorist does not? Well, then the pedestrian is out 10 for exercising due care. The motorist does not exercise due care, so they don't have any costs of taking care. But is there an accident? Yes. There will be an accident. Who's liable for the accident costs? That's the motorist. So they're out 100. So you get minus 10 minus 100. And then finally, if both parties exercise due care, then that reduces the accident cost down to 10%. Reduces the probability of accident down to 10%. So the expected accident cost is $10. Who has to bear that? Well, that's the motorist, because if there is an accident, the motorist has to pay. And then on top of that, they're each out 10 for exercising care. So you're out minus 10, minus 20. So, let's see. Let's get rid of my arrow there. What does that mean? I've not been very consistent with the colors here, have I? If the pedestrian, let's say, does not take care, right? So that puts us in this row. Then the motorist could either not take care and be out 100 or exercise care and be out 110. They have to pay. There's going to be an accident and they have to pay for it either way. So they're better off not taking care, right, in that situation. Now, what if the pedestrian does take due care? What's better off for the motorist? Well, if the pedestrian does take due care, then the motorist is better off exercising due care. So the motorist does not have a dominant strategy, right? Their strategy is dependent on what the pedestrian does. So now let's think about it this way. What's better off for the pedestrian? Let's pick a different color. We'll use orange this time. So for the pedestrian, if the motorist were to not exercise care, that puts us in the left column. Would the pedestrian be better off exercising due care? That gives us minus 10. Or not taking care? That gives us 0. Well, definitely 0 is better than being out 10. Now, what if the motorist does exercise due care? That puts us in the right column. If the pedestrian exercises due care, they're out 10. If they don't, they're out 0. So it turns out that the pedestrian is better off not taking care no matter what the motorist does. And even if the pedestrian does not take care, then the motorist is better off not taking care as well. And we end up in this cell up here where nobody exercises care. So a similar outcome to a world where we had no tort liability, and we miss out on the savings to society of having people take precautions and minimize accidents. So strict liability, probably also not an optimal liability regime. So to sort of sum these up, and this is, granted, this is a gross simplification of reality, right? And that's what models are. That's common, in economics and lots of other places. But it does help us think through these, the costs and benefits and the incentives that it creates. So under a world of strict liability, as well as under our world of no liability, where was that one? In both of those cases, we ended up here where nobody exercised care. But in some of the intermediate cases, either with simple negligence or with simple negligence with contributory negligence, in both of those, we ended up in the bottom right, where in fact the social costs were less, and because people took appropriate levels of care, exercised appropriate levels of caution. So the optimal rule will vary somewhat from situation to situation, but there are many cases where some variation on negligence, whether it's simple negligence, negligence with contributory negligence as a defense, which we saw some cases on, or comparative negligence, right? Negligence with comparative negligence, like in the fuzzy pink slipper case, right? Any of those we can see can create better rules, better incentives that encourage lower costs for society. And so that's why we look at these examples. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have questions about these, feel free to email me, or we can I'll set up some office hours and we can Zoom chat about it. But take a look at those and the additional materials that I posted. Think that through in terms of the incentives of tort liability. All right, thanks.